Hello, everyone. This is International Business Environment, Unit 6. If you still remember, before the midterm test, we talked about the theoretical framework regarding international trade. The whole idea is that when nations are allowed to trade with one another, win-win situation can be created. There's a concept called comparative advantage. Basically, it means that even if a nation is not as efficient to produce two types of goods to another country, that nation still has the comparative advantage, which is to focus on what it is the best at. So today we're going to talk about international trade in a more practical framework that involves politics. Let's take a look at the PowerPoint slide that I have prepared for you. Political economy of trade. If international trade is so good, why do you think people would do something to make it harder for countries to trade? To be more precise, it's usually the government that intervenes in trade. Why? Why does a government intervene in trade? Although international trade almost certainly benefits consumers, the reality is not all the stakeholders may benefit from it. You can imagine some jobs may be lost. You may imagine some small businesses may find it difficult to compete with the multinational companies. Governments intervene in trade out of three major motives. Number one, political motive. Politicians and governments, they may consider trade under certain circumstances would threaten national security. Another possible reason out of the political motive may have to do with the response to unfair trade. That means one country finds that the other country is not being fair to them, so they've decided to retaliate and to intervene in trade. Or in order to protect certain industries and jobs, especially if a political party wants to gain influence or voters' support. Now, governments may also intervene in trade because of economic motives, to protect certain jobs, to protect the infant industries, meaning the industries that are new in the country, and the government wants those infant industries to grow to a certain point so that they can be competitive. So before the infant industries can become competitive, a government may intervene in trade to protect those industries. To pursue strategic trade policy, and let's not forget, if a government imposes, for example, tariff, revenue can be generated. The third type of motives is the cultural motives, including the cultural objectives of a country, the protection of national identity. And you can think about, like, some countries are so much threatened by, for example, the Hollywood movies. So in order to preserve the local national identity and culture, they will do something to make it harder for the Hollywood movies to enter the market. So it can also be out of health or safety reasons. I guess when we talk about international trade, you can picture that it creates a bigger economic pie. However, not every individual necessarily gets a larger slice. After the Second World War, a lot of people see the importance of trade. So they try to promote trade because that hopefully can create more economic efficiency and also political stability. However, some governments, some countries, they see increasing the export would be a good thing, but they are not so enthusiastic to promote import. Because of that, they would basically do different kinds of things to promote export, but not deliberately to promote import. There are different ways that export can be promoted. For example, subsidies. Up to a point that sometimes a country can export a product at a price that is lower than that normally charged domestically, or one that is lower than the production cost. Export financing. The government can set up a department or can work with the local banks and try to make it easier for exporters to borrow money. And then some countries, they may even set up a specific location within a country that is officially designated for eligibility for tariff and tax exemptions with respect to the purchase and import of raw materials, components, or finished goods. Special government agencies are also very often established with the same purpose, which is to increase the export of country. On the other hand, a government can also set up trade barriers to make it more difficult for foreign goods to enter the local market. Tariffs is basically a type of tax that would be imposed, and foreign goods would then become more expensive. Quotas. For example, a country only allows 5,000 foreign cars to enter the market each year. Embargoes, especially if the two governments are fighting, having a battle between each other, then embargo can be a way to hit the economy of the enemy. Local content requirements. meaning that a certain percent of the production must be done within a country. Administrative delays make it harder for foreign goods to enter the market on a timely basis. Currency controls, which is to control the inflow and outflow of money. Now, sometimes it can actually be a combination of tariff and quota. For example, when you look at what it says here, for the first 1,000 tons of the import, 10% of tariff would be charged. But anything over 1,000 tons would involve 80% tariff. So that is a combination of tariff and quota. As said, after the Second World War, a lot of countries, they see the benefits, the importance of international trade. On one hand, protectionist policies, including tariff quotas, are still around. But for the past few decades, we also see that there are many efforts being put in order to enhance international trade, in order to promote free trade. The WTO, World Trade Organization, is one of the most important organizations to promote free trade. There are more than 150 countries involved. And if you look at the history here, before the WTO, it was the general agreements on tariffs and trade. And then the WTO has been set up. The general agreement on tariffs and trade is to promote free trade by reducing both tariff and non-tariff barriers to international trade. However, services were not covered by this original system. It was mostly about products and goods. There are different negotiations happened. Turn out the creation of the World Trade Organization happened back in the mid-1990s. Now, the WTO, World Trade Organization, regulates trade among nations. Main goals of the WTO are about to have the free flow of trade, to help negotiate further opening of markets, to settle trade disputes among its members. Also, the WTO embraces the principle of non-discrimination, meaning that to make sure that members, countries, they can maintain the normal trade relations. However, the WTO, with more than 150 countries involved, turns out not to be as effective as many people would have expected. Do you know why? Now think about this. If we have 150 people trying to come up with a place for picnic The ones who live in Burnaby may want to go to a place in Burnaby, which is closer to where they live. But if you're living in Surrey, you probably want to go to a park in Surrey to have the picnic. If you're living in Richmond, you may have another preference. And we're not talking about 150 people here. We're talking about 150 countries. So you can imagine how many interests are involved and how difficult it is to come up with an agreement that pleases all 150 members, all 150 countries. So WTO, although with a very good objective, a very good vision, finds it very difficult to promote free trade. Turn out that the regional trading agreements have become popular. That means rather than having 150 countries to negotiate an agreement, it's probably easier for the countries that are in the same region to come up with trading agreement. One classic example is the free trade agreement among Canada, United States, and Mexico. Now, there are different levels of international trade agreement. So we will talk about that. And in the meantime, if you have any question, feel free to email me. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.